Okay, I'll take the floor here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on wherever you are connected today. Welcome today to all the participants. I see the number is growing along the way. So welcome today to participate to our Skillman webinar. As you know, yesterday we had another webinar connected to this one today, actually talking about generating enthusiasm in youngsters for TVET pathways. Today's webinar is called Technical and Vocational Education and Training during times of lockdown and pandemic. So today we will focus more on the pandemic situation and how it has affected youngsters. But we will get in deep later on. First thing, I would like to give a big thank you to the Assembly of European Regions and their huge help that they have been given in the organization of this webinar. I also would like to thank all the panelists today that took their time to speak and present with us today. So thank you very much. And thank you all participants to be here and to enjoy our webinar today. As usual, as you have noticed, all the participants have their cameras switched off at this point, and their microphones is also switched off. That doesn't mean that you can't contribute later. On the contrary, we would like to have a very interactive event today. So during the Q&A space after the presentations of our panelists, you will be able, if you want, to speak and ask your questions directly to our panelists today by clicking the icon that you see in the bottom bar, raise your hand icon. Otherwise, throughout the whole webinar, you can also write your question in written by clicking the Q&A button that you see here below. We will collect all the questions, and then when the Q&A space will happen, we will ask the questions directly to the speakers. But that will come for later. A very brief self-introduction. My name is Valentina De Vico. I'm usually always present in these occasions. I'm happy to see many friends and colleagues attending today's webinar. I am the communication manager. I am connected from Florence in Italy, and I welcome all of you from all over the world. So today as well, in a while, I will present our moderator who is moderating today's session, and also the speakers. From my part, I would just like to give a very quick introduction about the Skillman Network, who is co-hosting today's webinar, and to give a few updated highlights on our newest numbers to see together our achievements. So the Skillman Network is an international network that it's aimed at introducing and exchanging skills in the advanced manufacturing sector, and also introduce new competences and curriculums for companies. We bring together many stakeholders around the world. Nowadays we have more than 600 members coming from 300 regions, even more, scattered around 93 countries in the world. We also have more than 50 ambassadors that spread the principles of the Skillman Network around the world, coming from different backgrounds. Education providers, industries, TVET providers, policymakers, centers of vocational excellence, etc. Last year, we have created 4 peer learning clubs that I will be talking just a little bit more just in a while. And now we count 208 experts. So basically, those are focus groups of experts that gather around to discuss 4 different topics related to TVET. With them, we have also published 4 position papers still in 2020. They are published on our website. And we continue to bring on the discussions and to make more results in the future. Digitally, we have a very huge presence. We count more than 5,000 registered users in on our website, Skillman.eu. So if you want, please go and visit the website. And throughout all these years, we have been implementing a series of activities aimed at forming strategic partnerships with our stakeholders and put them together for different purposes. Today is one of the 18 webinars that we have designed on EU fund opportunities, again, to build synergies between our stakeholders and move on with strategic partnerships for future European projects. We have also organized some seminars that were embedded in the European Skills Week. We have endorsed the Pact for Skills, and here you see all the numbers. Our biggest event is the Skillman International Forum. Last year, it was a great success. We had 470 delegates connected online from all over the world. So for us, that's a big reason of pride. And later on, we will implement other strategic activities, for example, train the trainers, workshops, desk service for small and medium enterprises, and etc. This is just to give you an overview of the geographical coverage of the members of the Skillman Network. As I said, they come from 93 countries and they are more than 600 active members nowadays, coming from, I would say, all the continents. The Skillman Network and its activities are embedded in the Skillman project, the EU-funded KA3 project that is aimed at implement a strategy to develop a large network of centers of vocational excellence. We are collaborating with many international organizations around the world. As I mentioned, the Assembly of European Regions is one of them. Then we also partner with IVETA, the International Vocational Education and Training Association, EAPRIL, and the European Training Foundation. So I would get back to these peer learning clubs to extend my invitations to all the participants who are here today. So we assume that you're interested in the topic that we'll be addressing today. Just a heads up, we will address this topic later after the webinar in these peer learning clubs that we have created. As you see, those on the right side of your screen, those are the 4 different topics that are addressed in the discussions of the peer learning clubs. So they all revolve around TVET related topics. We will be addressing the same topics that we are talking about today. So please join those groups. Right now we have more than 200 experts involved. Julia must be sharing with you the link to be able to join those groups. And before giving the word and floor to our moderator today, I would remind you that we are also streaming live on the Skillman YouTube channel. So if you have any technical difficulties, please join us there. And also, as usual, help us to help you. Help us to improve the quality of our webinars by filling this evaluation form that, again, Julia is sharing in the chat box. Again, now it's time for me to leave the floor to Birgit Sandu, the moderator of today's webinar, the project manager of the Assembly of European Regions. Birgit, if you want, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Valentina, and good morning, good evening to all the participants who joined us. So, as mentioned by I am Birgit Sandu, the European project manager at the Assembly of European Regions. We are the largest independent interregional organization in the broader Europe, with around 140 regional authorities from 30 different countries. And we are a forum for regional politicians to engage in interregional cooperation and to voice the regional interest on the European stage. So, as mentioned by Valentina, today we are here to discuss together and to exchange about how we can prevent early school leaving with regard to vocational education and training in a context that is particularly challenging as the one of the COVID-19 pandemic. This webinar complements the previous webinar we held yesterday, where we shared experiences and tools for generating new enthusiasm with regard to vocational education training and boosting the self-confidence of young people, making them more aware of the opportunities related to technical and vocational education and training. To this aim, we listen and acknowledge, yes, the funds opportunities made available by the European Commission, but also some good practices from regions, in particularly Catalonia and Alba. Today, we move a bit forward, and indeed, we try to focus now on addressing this particular situation that we are living, and see how we can encourage young people and support them, keeping them interested in learning in a global context that is very different from the one before the pandemic. Because the pandemic did not change only the learning modality, but also the role of teachers and schools themselves. And vocational education and training schools had to basically convert their physical classrooms and work-based learning, which were the characteristics of this type of education, into digital environments over the night. And in this context, where young people experience isolation, the virtual class becomes a place for community. And at the same time, keeping the attention and motivation of students becomes particularly relevant for teachers as global events increase the uncertainty. Of course, many of these challenges that I've just named are not new. They did not come with the pandemic, but they were they were like further increased by the COVID-19. So in this context of distance learning, early school leaving becomes even more of a risk, and has a particular impact over those so-called vulnerable learners. While yes, it's not the time, and maybe we should not think about reinventing the entire wheel of vocational education and training system. What we can do, and it's already a very good step forward, is making the most out of the tools and experiences that we have at our disposals. Indeed, there are already existing tools to address early school leaving that can be applied to the context of the pandemic. This is why we have invited Irene Psifideux, the expert at the European Department for Learning and Employability of the European Center for the Development of Vocational Training, and she will present us the VET toolkit for tackling early leaving. This is a concrete tool that was made available, and it's an incredible resource. And we would like to present it to you in order to make a better value, to have a better value for the users and to guide you through the employment of this tool. At the same time, we have also, we want also to share and hear from regional experiences because they matter. And we are very pleased to welcome Borja Castellet, project manager at El Lindar, a new chance school in Catalonia. And with whom we are very pleased to work again because we have already worked with him in the past. He will explain us how the work of El Lindar and what they have been implementing in the context of the pandemic. Before we move to our speakers, we would like to hear from you. And we will launch now a poll question to know, according to you, how has the pandemic affected education? And participants are invited to share their answer, and they can choose multiple options. So I kindly ask Valentina to launch the poll.
Sure. Okay.
So again, you can choose more than one option. Maybe, Valentina, we can collect the answers now and see them. Okay, so as we can see, actually, like most of the answers were valuable for the participants, but we can see that the majority thinks indeed, which is indeed a relevant issue when it comes to the pandemic and learning, that it has increased the social inequalities, as yes, not all the people have the same access to the tools. So yes, that's a motivation, an additional motivation to move further with the discussion and to hear from Irene and the toolkit that the Center for the Development of Vocational Education and Training developed to this aim. So Irene, the floor is yours, and I'll let you present.
Thank you very much, Birgit. Thank you very much for this nice and very positive and enthusiastic introduction, both to you and Valentina. I must say that I very much appreciate this invitation, and I share the same enthusiasm for vocational education and training. And I do hope that today we will provide some tools and resources we have developed at CEDEFOP to motivate young people to engage more in vocational education and training, and really try to fight across Europe and across the world also for reducing the dropout rates from vocational education and training particularly. So without further delay, I will try to share my screen, and I would just wish that you confirm that you can properly see my presentation. It's okay, all right, so let me put it in the mode. It takes a second. Okay, so I think it's not very much needed to explain why tackling early leaving from education and training really matters. You know that early leavers from education and training and dropouts are at a greater risk for becoming socially excluded. And you know also that the evidence shows that unfortunately the low-skilled young people, they are more likely to be trapped in low wages jobs, but also to not enjoying the same quality of life and prospects for their both professional and personal development. Currently in Europe, you may know that 1 in 10 young people do not qualify in upper secondary education. And this is actually what Eurostat defines an early leaver or an early school leaver: somebody who has not qualified in upper secondary education. So you may imagine in our current world with this so demanding jobs and skills and changing environments and labor markets, somebody who is not qualified in upper secondary education, how can he really find his way in life and labor market? As this event is particularly focused also to highlight and point out the difficulties that especially learners at risk are facing during the pandemic, I think, to be honest, that during the pandemic, all learners became at risk, if you allow me to say this. What we did at CEDEFOP was an instant research engaging our ambassadors. I will talk to you in a while what are our ambassadors, and we're happy today to have some of them participating in this event. So we asked them actually to tell us how is the extending school closures that took place in first and second wave of the COVID impacting on learners at risk, and how actually also teachers and trainers are being influenced by this new situation, what challenges they face, and how ready they feel to be able to respond. So we have launched a short survey, and we got, I think, quite obvious responses, in the sense of, yes, of course, it's learners at risk are at greater risk to be excluded from the learning process, but we wanted also to see what kind of activities were taking place at European level to be able to support these learners. This survey, you have to think, that responds to the first wave of COVID. So when suddenly, from one day to another, in many European countries and also across the world, and especially, for example, in my country, from one day to the other, they announced to us that schools closed down. So we talk about zero preparation for such a situation. This is where we launched this short survey to our ambassadors, asking them what activities, what policies, and what do countries do, and of course regions also, and national governments, to support learners at risk. So you can see here some of the responses. These actually responses are, let's say, those more prominent across the different countries that we asked. And you may see that indeed, despite this was such a non-expected event, they were taking actions to support these learners. However, a big however, there is no doubt that despite the efforts made by national government, regions, the institutions themselves, this was a very, very difficult situation for all. And this was also proved in the second wave, that despite the situation, it was still known in the second wave and the second school closures, we could still see that although some lessons were learned and that countries were better prepared to support schools, and especially vocational education and training schools, but still it was very hard to reach those learners at risk. So it's undoubtable that digital learning formats, they do have limits, of course, and these limits are huge for those who are at risk, for those who cannot be connected as easily as we connected today, that they cannot follow in the same way instructions and online courses because they may have some visibility. And so forth. So a general conclusion, I would say, and a lesson learned from this pandemic could be that there is no digital inclusion without social inclusion. So we may not expect that these populations that are socially excluded before the pandemic, that suddenly will be able to be digitally included and be able to attend smoothly the learning process. Also, another big lesson, I think, it was that achieving quality is as important as ensuring accessibility in distance learning. I think that in the first wave and the first closure of schools, everybody was mainly concerned to ensure accessibility to distance learning. In Greece, the government was trying to find funds and be able to distribute to schools the digital devices, because schools were not digitally equipped to be able to reassure the digital connection of their learners. In the second wave, although the connectivity issue was still top in the agenda, there were also concerns about the quality of distance learning, because what we did during this pandemic in several circumstances, it was that we transformed our physical teaching methods and approaches into digital. And as you may understand, this is not the most efficient way to be done. And of course, this physical and more presential pedagogies cannot help learners at risk online. Another thing is that we've seen that, and we heard from different teachers' unions and associations that many teachers were saying, I lost my students. I mean, since the school closed down, I don't have contact with 5 or 10 of my students and so forth. So up to what extent we really monitor how many students really continue to being part in the online distance learning, and of course up to what extent we may reassure for them quality learning outcomes as we did with the presential teaching. So evaluating the impact on learners at risk and on increasing possibly the dropout and early leaving rates in Europe due to this COVID-19, I think that it's something that we really need to take seriously, and we really need to focus all our resources to be able to monitor and support these people. So having said this more as an introduction to the present session, at CEDEFOP we've started working about tackling early leaving for more than a decade now, exactly with the Education and Training 2020 objectives that aim to reduce early leaving from below 10%. You may know that this is one of the most successful objective reached so far, because we're almost in 10.2 by 2020, where there are other strategic objectives they haven't managed to be achieved in that sense. But still, this 10.2% means 1 in 10 people drop out from not being able to qualify in upper secondary education. So still, this is very important. Needless to say that this is, of course, an average. And this means that in countries like Spain, and we have the second speaker coming from Spain, these disparities in the rates of early leaving are huge. Within one country, you may find regions like the Balearic Islands or Catalonia with very high rates of early leaving. And you can find other regions like the País Vasco, to give you an example, with very, very low rates of early leaving, much lower than the average of the EU. So you see regional disparities, and because I addressed the regions today, are extremely important. So even if we have a global EU objective of 10% almost reached, let's see what is happening in our regions and how important the high rates of early leaving still remain. So we've been doing very intensive and systematic research at CEDEFOP, as I said, and apart from publishing reports and organizing policy learning fora and events and trying to engage all actors concerned, we also thought a few years ago to develop a very practical toolkit, and this is where I'm invited today to present you. So back in 2017, we launched the so-called VELT toolkit for tackling early leaving. At that stage, the whole research and the whole landscape of what is actually happening in vocational education and training in relation to early leaving, it was still quite unknown. So it was CEDEFOP's research that really gave light of what is the role of VET. Does really VET increases the rates of early leaving across Europe, or can really VET also may help preventing early leaving by accommodating all those learners who are low achievers in general education and otherwise could drop out? They do really have now more opportunities choosing a VET pathway to continue and remain in education and training. And also, what is the role of VET for attracting all those who have already dropped out back into education and training? So this research actually shows that there's indeed, depending on the VET system, depending on the country, you could find high rates of early leaving, but we also found this very, very positive role that vocational education and training plays to prevent and counteract early leaving. And we gathered all this research, and we developed analytical guidelines, we collected good practices, we wanted to see the impact evaluation of these good practices and what are the key characteristics of these practices that make them to be good and successful, so that countries can learn from each other and regions can learn from each other, so that the same country can learn from each same country of what is happening. And we really collected all these resources into this toolkit, which is aimed both for policymakers as well for vocational education training practitioners, but also, as you may see here, all those people who may be involved in tackling early leaving. You know that early leaving is a multidimensional phenomenon, and you do really need to bring on board all these actors to reassure that you can really tackle successfully. So this is the first online resource of its kind. It is evidence-based. As I said, all the resources is based on research made. It is highly interactive because we do have several tools where you can get instant feedback, you can develop your action plans, you can evaluate your practices and receive guidelines on how to do that and so forth. And we have a plethora of different resources that I will try very briefly to present to you today. I think that my colleague Alexandra, who is with us together, Alexandra Farazuli, I think she has already shared with you the link of the toolkit and the latest research we did on the impact of learners at risk. So you may, I invite you that you navigate and you explore the resources. So I don't know anymore if this has been presented in more than 60 events. The number 60 seems very small to me. I think that I'm engaged every week to a different event to present the toolkit, but that's not this is not what, of course, makes this successful. I think that the success of this tool, of this toolkit, is that it has been developed together with our audience. So the good practices that you may find on this toolkit, it is actually developed, identified together with our audience, together with our users who come to us, who propose good practices to us, and so forth. So we also have the network of ambassadors that I referred to you before, and they're also very actively in disseminating and enriching the resources of the toolkit. So preparing something, developing something together with our users, I think this is what makes it both user-friendly and also useful to them. So this toolkit has the following structure. It is basically all the resources of the toolkit are structured in 3 main sections. This is the section identify here, the section intervene, and the section evaluate. If you think about it, it's the cycle of a policy, how you identify your target group. So how can you identify learners at risk? How can you identify early school leavers? How can you intervene to help them? And how can you evaluate what you have done, whether it is successful or not? What we have also developed and what we want to promote through this toolkit is that each intervention, each policy should be tailor-made. So if you want to support learners at risk or early school leavers, you should really design your policies according to their needs. And how can you know their needs? Well, we developed 6 profiles. This is through research, as I said, and we try to not to label people, but to categorize the needs of the people, to try to understand the needs of the young people. So these short labels here might be mistaken, not wrong, but not well perceived from you, because you may think that we give labels. No, if you click into one of these profiles, you will see a detailed description of what are the needs of somebody that we call learners escaping the system. And you will see that all the blame is given to the system, it's not given to the learners. So how can education training become better to accommodate the needs of these people? And know how can these people can be adapted to our education and training systems. So I see that Borja is moving positively his head, because I very much know, Borja, your good practice, and we do illustrate it on our toolkit. And I very much, I'm very excited about what you're doing there in Catalonia, because also I will refer to this just right now. We also talk about second chance schools, and I think that we should be talking exactly about what the example of Borja will be about: new opportunities. A second chance is the second chance that the learner gives to the education and training system, and it's not a second chance that the system gives to the learner. I think this is a very strong message that comes from all people who are involved in what we still call second chance education. So here are several interventions that you may find under the section intervene that I referred to you before. there is a richness of different approaches, and each time that you select one intervention, or each time that you select the profile that I gave you before, this is linked in the toolkit. As it is interactive, it is linked. This intervention approach can support this and this and this profile of learners. So it's not for all, you see. So it gives you tailor-made responses. So here you see that we also have an intervention that in the EU policy discourse is called second chance measures. And by clicking, just to show you how an intervention, I in purpose, I selected this one so as I can link with what Borja will be talking later. So I know, and I'm not asking you to be able to read my screen. It's not an ophthalmological test, but it's just to give you the understanding of, once you click into one intervention approach, you get a problem statement. So what is the problem? Here is how you can re-engage young people in education and training. Who are the beneficiaries? So here you have the different profiles of those that we have perhaps described before, and more target groups here that can really be appropriate, this approach. And then it tells you tip by tip, this is the guidelines given. So if you're a national government, or if you're a regional government, or if you are a vet institution, these are the steps that you need to take in order to develop a second chance measure which is appropriate for these people. And then we also have a section on expected outcomes. So once you develop this intervention, what should be expected to achieve? And here, very little, you can see in small letters that in relation to this intervention, you can find data, resources, you can find good practices. So here we illustrate the example of Borja. You can find the example, you can see how this second chance measure is being implemented in reality. You can find other tools, publications, and so forth. So pretty much this is how you explore the toolkit. And the third last session is about evaluate. Valentina or Brisa, how much time do I have, just to not exceed my time? Do I still have a couple of minutes?
Yes, please. You can have like still 2-5 minutes to sum up briefly.
Okay. Thank you. So the last evaluate section is what we saw from our research at CEDEFOP is that what is actually lacking in Europe is the evaluation culture. We do policies for doing policies. We develop measures for developing measures. Sometimes the same country, it's the same country itself, especially if it is a large decentralized country, does not know the policies and practices that is being implemented across the country. Don't take this as a criticism. It's the reality. This is the reality. So we decided to develop specifically this section because we wanted to support national government and regional governments to be able to evaluate their practices, and monitor also their practices. So you can find here on the right different tools that we have. The last two, the reflection tools for policymakers and vet providers, are interactive tools. They help you develop exactly to identify the weaknesses that you do have in your system, and to help you to address these weaknesses and develop an action plan. So I really invite you to have a look to that. So I will finish and give very briefly for 1 minute the floor to Alexandra. This is the network of ambassadors I was talking about. We have, if I can name Yorgos Giotopoulos with us today. I'm sorry if I haven't seen other names, but I'm sure we have more ambassadors with us today. And they are doing a great job to disseminate this toolkit and enrich the resources of this toolkit. So I will give the floor to Alexandra here at this point to show you, this is an open invitation to everyone who is involved and interested with the issue of tackling early leaving. Alexandra will explain now how you can join this network. It's not a network of experts. You don't require to have high qualifications or anything, but being involved in vocational education and training and somehow caring for tackling early leaving from education and training. So Alexandra, please refer to this, and also you may also refer how could they, that they can also submit a good practice. We invite all regions to submit a good practice to the toolkit, and we do have a particular section for that. So Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rena. I just share with you actually Rena's screen actually, where you can find this form. Filling this form, you apply to become an ambassador, and very shortly we assess your application, and then you can you can become actually an ambassador. And let me know if this link actually works, because before I shared there was a problem with a link, but I think that this one is working. And yeah, I don't want to.
You can apply directly, you can see and you can identify and see better what is the role of ambassadors and how can you join us. Similarly, if you click up here, Alexandra, if I'm not mistaken, is the contact the team, where you can find templates that you may download about sending us good practices. So if you wish that we illustrate your practices on this toolkit and make known your practice across Europe and beyond, you are very welcome to click there and send us or contact us directly, and we may discuss this opportunity. So I think with this we finish. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you to Valentina and Birzad for having invited me again, and I give you back the floor.
Thanks a lot actually to both you and Alexandra for this very interesting and relevant presentation. We invite all the participants, regions, VET providers to actually make use of this tool that is available, and also to contribute to feed the process, being ambassador and submitting good practices. Before we move, we invite you also to start typing your questions, so that then we can speed up the process and read them to our panelists at the end of the contribution of Borja. So if you have any question specific or more general, type it please in the Q&A box. Before we move to Borja and his presentation, we want to hear once more from you. And we will launch a new poll. So Valentina, please, can you share the poll? Yes, we would like to know what is for you the main challenge that VET providers are facing during the pandemic. And we invite you to choose one option among the following presented. We will leave it open for less than 1 minute because we are rushing against time. So try to put your thoughts in there. Okay, Valentina, I think we can display the answers. Okay, it seems that you are all quite sure that one of these challenges is the main one, which is ensuring indeed the quality of education despite the different format. But as we just saw, we have tool at least to go to that direction of ensuring better quality education. So okay, thanks a lot for your feedback. And then we can, yes, we can listen to the experience shared by, that Borja will share about how El Lindar works and yes, how they have been working during these times. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'm Borja from El Lindar in Cornellà Llobregat, small city next to Barcelona. I'll try to share my screen. Apps. I hope everything is okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, just before starting with my explanation, just say that we share most of the ideas that Irene just said. The lockdown was very quick and we have to improvise some things, but now 6 months later, I think we have some challenge that we can identify and work on them. I don't know if we are a second chance school or a new chance school, because I don't know if there's a second chance, a third chance, I don't know, but I agree with Irene that the chance is for the system, not for the kids, for our teenagers and youngsters. But well, here in Catalonia, we say that we are a new chance school. We were born in 2003 in Cornellà de Llobregat, next to Barcelona, with the aim of help these, accompany these youngsters to return to the educational system and increase employability, but not to get them to a job. That's a difference that we have to explain every time, because what we do is pre-vocational and educational training. So we are working with teenagers and youngsters younger than 25 years old, that they are not prepared to go into the labor market. So what our aim is to help them to go to the, for example, vocational training, or continuing their educational path in other ways. We have every year between 350 and 400 students, and in a guidance path, and we try to personalize and do real job training. So we are not just doing one training of 300 hours or 1 year training. We propose them a path that can be done in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. There are some that stays as 1 year, and there are some that stays 5 years. It's up to them. So we respect their logical time, not a chronological time. And in this way, we have some training paths. For example, hairdressing, car mechanics, cooking and waitressing. We also do flexible mandatory secondary school for younger than 16 years old. We have just set up a digital Fab Lab. So what we do is just propose them some training paths. They choose one of them, and they stay as long as they want. And we try to combine educational in the classrooms, for saying something, and with real job. In this way, we have three business activities. We run a beauty salon, a restaurant and bar, and we have a building workshop. So some students are employee in our business. For example, you go to our restaurant, and the people that cook for you and serve to you, they are students that obviously pay for that in the last steps of their paths. Just a few main elements of our educational policy, just to give you a quick picture of us. We focus in 5 or 6 elements. The idea of subjective accompaniment, that's the base of everything. We try to listen in order to be able to hold them. And then this idea of training and job alternation, learning by doing, a real learning by doing, and if it's possible, in a real job. This idea of a flexible and personalized training paths, and we try to do that even if it's pre-vet. We try to qualify them and certify our trainings. Then the idea of that we are always constructing the school. So this idea of Didact Lab, in order to research and design new learning spaces all the time. The last one is a new Fab Lab with the Orange Foundation. And in this way of collaboration, we build with others, like business companies, social and educative agents. The restaurant, we have an alliance with a big group in Barcelona. The hairdressing path we do also with a huge company here in Catalonia, Cebado. So we are not alone, and we try to build up with others. And then regarding to our professional, our teachers, we spend almost 2 hours per week, more or less 2-3 hours per week, to do methodological working space for professionals to build knowledge collectively, because we like a lot to make us question, why this student don't learn, where is the point, and we try to think about it, and that's the way we do it. We have some space times for 2-3 hours per week, just to to think about it, and that's the way we have built up the El Guinda for the past 15 years. And what about the COVID pandemic? Just to say it fast, we think that connectivity is important, but the bond is more important than connectivity. And I link that with the something that Irene has just said, that in some cases, some teachers say that they lost their students. We have to say that we didn't lost any students. We have the we have the content with almost the 99% of the students, and there are students that the 50% have no connectivity possibilities, have not they have not how I said I don't find the word. Devices. So even if more than 50% of them have no devices or Wi-Fi connection, for example, we keep the contact of 99% of the students, and that's because the important we do it to this emotional bond that we try to make with them. And just to say it quick, five ideas of our experience, challenges, and learnings. The first one, obviously, from the first day we focus on the emotional and educational bond rather than the trainings. So what we try to do is that the important thing is keeping the content with them, and obviously we have some duties, some homework and everything, but the important thing was just to keep them in contact and help them in this difficult situation. We are talking about some teenagers that they were maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 people in the same flat, a small flat, without internet connection. So the situation were even worse than of most of the population. And just two questions that we make up: how can we still be close despite the physical distance, and how we maintain the link, the bond, without the body, without the gaze and our voice. Just to make it practical, more than 3,000 phone calls, WhatsApp, video calls. We increase the time of the workday to think about how to maintain the bond. And we were always available, not only from 9 to 6, but the 24 hours a day and 7 days of the week. So because some of the students change their routines and everything, but every time that the students send up a WhatsApp, we were there just to help them. The second point is that we have to make up a new virtual methodological strategy. We try not to copy what we do physically to a digital environment. We try not to do it. Obviously, some of the activities and duties were just that, a copy of the physical activities, but we have to learn how to use online forms, videos, gamification, use Instagram tools, WhatsApp, virtual learning environments, just making up some online breaks, no? Well, so we investigated about all the possibilities that the technology gives to us, and with the idea of insisting, but without demanding. No, the idea of the bond was the priority during these months. Well, as I told you before, more than the 50% of our students didn't have appropriate devices or Wi-Fi connection. So that's a barrier that increases educational inequalities, as Irene has told us before. And we set up a specific campaign to them, and well, we get 129 devices, and nowadays we have also just 150 are not enough, but we are still doing and working in this campaign just to give them the possibility of continuing studying. And two more ideas. We usually have scholarships to help them with transport or with basic needs. and we have to increase by 3 the scholarships to help them families and students. And then last but not least, the idea of reinvention, our collaboration with our private alliances. For example, in the restaurant, we were closed, but we have the students and we have the spirit of continuing. So with our alliance with Tragaluz, we set up a new takeaway service for the restaurant. Maybe it's not very a new idea, but for us was changing our mind, and we have to change our mind. And in fact, this takeaway service is still working, and very well, I think. And the idea of this new school year, just for finishing, how are we proposing this new school year? No, we work it with the idea of hybrid training. No, so we plan a course focused on that. So that means that we have some face-to-face physical trainings, and some days we do virtual education. So that means that we have to reschedule everything. We have to rethink groups, pedagogies, improve our virtual education environments. But with the idea of still thinking that the bond is the priority to generate and maintain these teachers. And for doing everything, we have to we train our teachers and students also into digital competences, but because not only students but also teachers, we were a very analogical human beings. And we spent the month of July with collaboration of with a partnership with Universitat Oberta Catalunya, a college that helped us to set up of this idea of an hybrid training. And that means that we have to develop our IT school structures, getting all devices and Wi-Fi connection for students. And we are working now with the idea of obtaining the official certification for online training. But because we are obliged to do virtual or online training, but we want also that the students gave our certification, right? Because one of the consequences that the students had is, even if they are still doing their trainings from March to June, the Catalan government didn't give them the certification. So this year we don't want that happens. So we are working also in this way. Maybe very quick, but I want you to let you in space to ask questions, and so that we can discuss everybody. So just say thank you to you. Thank you very much. And that's it.
Thanks a lot to you, Borja. That was a very interesting presentation and an innovative approach, which actually, yes, gives us also a reply to the poll that we sent before. It's not just about devices that are missing, but we can go beyond those devices limits and build on a different dimension, which indeed is more emotional, and we need also to adapt us to the condition of the students, and not only requiring students to adapt to our system. So that's a very important concept. Okay, so the time for the question interaction, unfortunately, is not that much. So unlike as anticipated at the beginning, we will not proceed by hand raising and giving the floor to the participants, but we will rather address the questions that are posed in the Q&A box. We have some questions for both speakers, so we can start with Irene, if you want. Stanislava would like to know some examples of regional countries that have been using the toolkit and the feedback that you received by them. And also, how can we help more BET stakeholders using the toolkit, and yes, how this should be involved more. And then we can move to Borja.
Okay, thank you, Birgit. Thank you very much, and thank you for these questions. Are very interesting. As I said, we do work with we basically respond to questions like when a region comes to us, or a city or a country comes to us and wishes that we organize an event, a workshop with them. We've organized several workshops with regions where they wanted to gather all regional, for instance, stakeholders together. We have done this in Germany, we've done it in Italy, in Spain, in France, and we gather all key actors together, which is already a success. When in a room, before COVID, in a room, you could gather all key actors, and then basically we were, from the whole toolkit, we were focusing more on this self-reflection tool for policymakers that I referred to, because there, the policymakers, they have different levels. We ask for policymakers for national, regional, or local level. So there we have together both vet providers and policymakers. We're working all together. We're using interactively, adapting, translating the tool in their language, and had a 1 or 2 day session to see how they can really identify the weaknesses, the problems they have, and how they can address them. For instance, in Frankfurt, in Germany, they had important issues with the dropping out from the work-based component. Surprise, surprise, the dual system that we all know, they also can face some issues. So they wanted us to support how to find a solution with the dropping out from the work-based element of the vet system. We worked a lot with Spain, we worked a lot with Catalonia, with the Baleares Islands. We've organized also similar workshops, especially for the regions that they are suffering more from this issue. So basically, we try to respond to inquiries and to provide support to regions. We're collaborating also with the Eurocities, so we had the chance also to gather different cities around Europe together and work. How to make it more known? I think this is exactly the mission of our ambassadors. So what we want is that that you really come to this network and you help disseminate, make this toolkit known in your country, in your region, even in your school. I think this is the only way. I truly believe, from the feedback that we've been receiving over the past year, that is a helpful resource. So now we really need to, we try from events, from social media, from everything to make this known, but I think it takes personal engagement of the ambassadors to further disseminate it and engage all actors concerned.
Thanks a lot. Very, very explicit answer. You actually have received a new question, which is from Maria Rosaria Nes, and it's in the chat box. Since it's a bit more technical and personal, because she was an ambassador for Italy and she changed organization, maybe you can reply to that question in writing while we see with Borja his questions. Okay, Borja. So people would like to know more about the subjective accompaniment. So you mentioned that in your presentation, and yes, we've been asked a bit more example of how this is done. And yes, I finished the question, so then you have time to manage them. Then they are asking also about what about the motivation for and the training for the trainers, not just the trainees. And then yes, your partnership with businesses was considered impressive, and yes, they would like to know how this partnership helped you develop solution during the pandemic as for this digital solution. So how this interaction with the private sector enabled to a better offer for the students. And then, yes, how actually teacher felt about those 20-hour support? Was it accepted by them? And then, yes, then, okay, we can answer this. Then there are one more question for Irene.
The idea of the subjective accompaniment is the key of our educational methodology. And we work with asking us questions. And one of the first questions that we have made 15 years ago was, why a student that doesn't learn, what makes him or her the difficulty to learn, and the idea is to, I don't know to explain it that in English. It's to help them to find the desire of study again. It's a very artisanal, one by one work. Lots of hours of accompaniment. We have a team with educators that spend with them the whole time they are in school. So I'm sorry because I don't know how to explain it that just in a few sentences and in English, but the idea is that just listen them and try to help them with their questions and accompany them to find a reason to study and to continue with their lives. Then our teachers were very pleased to have this training in July, and we did that with a university. It was our partnership with them that helped us to prepare this training, and all the teachers were very pleased to have this training because we are, as I said before, most of us, because I did this training too, we were analogical human beings, so we need it. And in the same way, we all teachers, we are all very, we knew that this was an exceptional moment. So in an exceptional moment, we have exceptional answers. And this being with these students, well, 24 hours per day, maybe it's too much, but with the idea of being all the time we could, was during the pandemic, but before the pandemic also. So maybe it's not correct, but all our students have our cell phones, and it's very, and usually they send us text message at night or in the afternoon, and teachers, they decide when to answer and when don't answer the questions. And according to to develop solutions, we have it with the restoration, with the restaurant, and with this idea of training. With the hairdressing and the car mechanics, we didn't find a solution, because the only way to find a solution was to bring the physical training to a digital training. So I think that's not, we are not proud about these two alliances in this way. But with the other two, with the training for teachers and the restaurant, yeah, they really help us to continue with our trainings. I don't know if I explain myself and if I answer all the questions, but if not, you can give my contact, and maybe writing I'm better with my English.
No, you explained pretty well, but as you said, actually, it's good because I've seen there are many questions still coming out. We will just address the last one, but in general, yes, I invite our panelists to share their contacts and the participants to contact AR, so that we can further, yes, move with this food for thoughts and learn how to apply these learnings that we just acknowledged. So yes, we have a last question for Irene, and then we close the session. So yes, Harilala is asking what could be the risk concerning the translation and adoption of the existing resources to non-Europeans as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This is a very, very valid question, I must say. Translation has always risks, and that's why also the decision we made, also because of restricted resources, is that the toolkit is available in English. And then good practices, they also have links to the national languages, regional languages, and so forth. But the main body of the toolkit is available only in English, which in my understanding, it's a big limitation, of course, because because you would wish that everything is available in your own language. So one thing is the translation, that in my personal opinion, this, if it is done by professional translators in any kind, in any language in the world, should be validated by people who work in the field. So policymakers, vet practitioners should definitely validate the translation of these resources. But what I wish to see more is the second part about the adaptation of these resources, meaning whether this European vet toolkit can be used for non-Europeans. To this, I would say a big yes. I would say that all the resources of the toolkit, first of all, they are not only valid for those who are concerned with vet, because you will see that the intervention approaches and lots of resources that we have can be easily also applied in general education, in any type of education, and to non-EU countries. Why? Because we don't tell you this is what is being done in X country, take it and adapt it to yours because you're going to have a great success. No, we've analyzed across countries and we identified these key characteristics that can make your intervention, that can make your practice to be successful. So it's already, you take guidelines and you can really contextualize them in your own setting. So I would say adelante, as Burja would say, go on and explore the resources also for non-European countries.
Thank you very much, Irene, and thank you, Borja and Alexandra, in general, for this fruitful discussion. So before giving the floor to Valentina to briefly mention how we can further discuss about this, yes, I would like, just to briefly recap that, today's webinar taught us that, with the pandemic, we thought that we weren't ready, but we actually already had tools at our disposal to improve the system of vet provision for students, but also that the chance that that we have is not for the students, but is a chance for the system to improve, which I think is a core takeover from these lessons. So we encourage all our participants, regions, countries, vet providers to employ what we already have and to continue to feed in the process with their good practices so that we can learn and improve our provision. Thank you again, all of you, for your contribution. And Valentina, you can tell us.
Yes, thank you very much for participating to today's webinar. It's the second webinar that we've been having in 2021. So we have begun the year with strong and ambitious activities this year. I would like to remind to all of you to participate to our next event on teachers training needs analysis. We will organize it in collaboration with the European Training Foundation. And it's going to be on the 10th of February at 10 Central European time. I think my colleague Julia is sharing with you the link to have further info about this webinar. And yes, let's keep in touch. I would like to propose and suggest to the speakers to just keep on this platform for 5 minutes more in case we have some participants that would like to have further interactions and to exchange your contacts, so you can further discuss this after the webinar. Thank you again all very much. I will just close today's webinar here. Again, I will leave the space open for 5 more minutes for everybody to interact. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you, Birgit and AER for co-organizing today's event. Thank you.